Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
And I'm not Lee White, but I am Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've illustrated, 50 or 75 books. We've all taught illustration at the university level, and something else.
What was the other one?
And off.
I forget.
Well, I messed myself up with that one. Let's see.
How did we forget the intro?
I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all taught illustration at university.
Yeah.
Together we published 50 books together.
Maybe that's it.
Okay.
Anyways, Lee can't join us today. He's on assignment.
Let's do it again.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
No, let's just keep going. It's fine. It's fine.
All right.
I just feel bad for the people, first time listeners today. They're gonna be like, "What the heck? This is amateur town,
amateur hour."
Okay, but Lee's on assignment, so he couldn't join us today. But we do have a special guest, and that's Larry MacDougall, and he is the creator of Guelph, which is a brand new book that just came out this last summer, I guess, or this fall.
You can see it if you're on YouTube at Society of Visual Storytelling on YouTube.
Yep. And here it is. It is an amazing book. Definitely worth the $30 price tag on Amazon. This is just chocked full of beautiful watercolor illustrations, beautiful sketchbook drawings. And what Larry's done is created this fantasy world where he calls it Lord of the Rings meets Wind in the Willows. So it's a bunch of little humanoid forest creature animals, and their dealings in the land of Guelph with each other and also against the darkness. What do we call it? The hinterlands. Is that what it is? Or the hinterlands are next to the sage tooth lands or something like that. Whatever. I just murdered it, but I'm still new to Guelph, so I can't remember all the specific names. Anyways, there's a darkness in the land, and it's just a cool little thing. We just got done talking to Larry. What did you get from that conversation, Will? What little gold nuggets? I mean, this is a guy who's had a 30-year career so far. Yeah. He's been around the block.
It's neat to talk to someone who has struggled like I did. And that's probably the biggest takeaway I did. And without spoiling it, I want, I'd let people listen for themselves. But we tend to look at someone in the senior part of their career who's killing it. Mm-hmm. And we go, well, sure, they can do it.
Yeah.
But not me.
Right. And you look at his art and it is masterful. Like the way the lines go down. And then you come to find out that the dude's done over 100 gaming books for like role-playing games, illustrations for them. I mean, there's definitely thousands and thousands of hours doing this craft. And this is a guy who told us he was a C student in college. He wasn't knocking the socks off of anybody back then. So I thought that was really cool. I thought it was cool, his little tidbit about having dinner with Mobius, who's one of my art heroes, and to hear I wrote down the quote that he said from Mobius, and I'm gonna ponder that this week and really think about that, because I do pull. Well, we can get into it later, maybe after the conversation. But it was really, that one really got me. So yeah, should we just roll right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we'll just get right down into it. I want to talk about your book, Guelph, and I had seen your work in my Twitter feed, and always just really impressed with it. I love the tone of what you're doing. It's the artwork's great, the character designs are great, the watercoloring, the pencil, everything's good, but it's the tone that you're coming across with. And so, unfortunately, I believe this was a Kickstarter, right?
Yes, it was.
It was a Kickstarter, and my experience was I stumbled upon it after the Kickstarter, or I missed the tweets about the Kickstarter or something.
Right.
Ended up getting it on Amazon, but that's sort of been my experience with the book, and also with your work, sort of how I came to it. Will, how did you come to it?
Well, I saw you on Facebook years and years ago. I think I might have even said something to you a few times.
I think so.
Yeah. I hope it was nice.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was okay.
No, I actually did a couple of paintings inspired by your work.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to see those one day.
Yeah. Just fun. I love the earthy quality and the real tactile feel, the texture. So if you're listening to this podcast, you got to check out the work, because otherwise, yeah. And on our YouTube channel, we're at SVSLearn, or actually Society of Visual Storytelling, on YouTube. And Jake's holding up the book right there. Well, and I was telling Jake right before we started, this was a passion project all the way. You can tell
Absolutely.
by looking at the book. I mean, I'm flipping through it and I'm like, okay, he put it all out there for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you just tell us what the book is and how it came to be?
Okay. Well, for me, what the book is, it's I've been freelancing in the gaming world and kids' books and animation for 30 years. But this book is my chance to tell my story. Because normally you don't get to tell your story. You're telling somebody else's story. So this time I'm going to tell mine. And what I chose to do was take a couple of my favorite books. One of them is Wind in the Willows, and the other one is Lord of the Rings. And those are two books that I would love to illustrate if I was ever given the chance to. And so what I did was I just combined them together and made my own project up. And it's kind of got both of those things in there. And the thing with those books too is that they've been illustrated a lot. So even if I was to get the job now, I'm not sure if I'd even want to illustrate Lord of the Rings, because they probably just want you to draw the same pictures that are always drawn. And we've seen those. So yeah, this is me just giving myself an assignment that I would love to get. And luckily I was able to find a publisher who I'd worked with before, and he agreed to publish. So we worked together on it. So
that's amazing. So how did it come to be? It's I assume these were sketchbook drawings. These were, warm-ups and cool downs after a day of illustrating. And when did it go from these are just ideas in a sketchbook to, oh shoot, I'm actually putting together a book now?
Yeah, I think because I've been drawing that world for a long time, for years and years.
With the idea that it would be a book, or that it was just for fun?
It was just for fun. Right from the beginning, I wanted to, when I would get an assignment, I would also want to do my own thing after. So I've always been doing my own work. Even when I get busy with assignments, I always try to carve out a little bit of time to do my own thing. So that's where those images came from. It was just me doing my own stuff, on the weekends or after hours or whatever. And kind of when I hit the 30-year mark in my career, I've been illustrating now for 30 years and I just turned 60, I kind of thought now's really the time when I'm if I'm going to do my own thing, it's got to be now. So yeah, it was just kind of a now or never kind of thing.
Before your hand gets too shaky to even hold the pencil.
Yeah, the eyes are going too.
Right. I had a freak out moment a couple of weeks ago. I was gardening in the yard and digging a pretty rough, using a trowel, right? And just getting in there, and I hadn't done manual labor in a while, right? And so later that day I had to draw, and my forearms were all tired from doing it. And my hand was shaky and I could barely do a straight line or make a, even get the detail in there. And I was like, oh, this is what it's going to be like in 20, 30 years.
Yeah, maybe. I've still got hand control, but what I have to do is I wear my glasses, but I also have like a lens, like a magnifying glass kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just hold that and then I draw.
So how big are these drawings, these originals?
Oh, they're not big. They're like 9x12 mostly. Oh, that's kind of like the zone I work in. Like some of them are a bit bigger. Like the end pages are much bigger, but the end papers. But mostly like 9x12 is kind of my comfort zone.
And is it all traditional?
Yeah.
So no digital. You do nothing. Wow.
I've tried, but it doesn't really do anything for me. Like I grew up in the 70s. So all the art that I love and everything that I aspired to was all traditional. So by the time digital was an option, I was already way down the traditional road. So I've just stayed there.
So the neat thing is every single image you have in that book, you could sell potentially.
And have.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm selling them now.
And for you guys that are trying to decide whether to work traditionally or digitally, that is a huge perk of the traditional side. You just don't have that. You can't sell an original. I mean, you've got the NFTs now.
Yeah.
But unless you've got a huge audience, I don't think NFTs are going to work out for most artists. So.
No, there seems to be a lot of people that are against them. I don't really understand exactly what they are, but I've heard that like a lot of people don't seem to like them.
Yeah, there's like people I respect who don't like them and people I respect who are all in on them. And there's fine arguments on both sides. So it really comes down to, I think.
I think just in the end on NFTs, there are going to be certain properties sold that will always maintain their value and probably most that will crash. That's my theory on them anyway.
So I want to ask a little bit more about, these are 9x12. What are you drawing with, like in the sketchbooks side of things, the line art, and then what are you doing watercolors with?
Okay, the sketchbook is Blackwing pencils if it's graphite, and just on sketchbook paper. And I also like drawing with Prismacolors for the colored sketchbook drawings. And for the watercolors, it's just basic Winsor Newton watercolors on either hot press or cold press paper. Because I like both, depending on like what kind of a picture you're making. And also I've gotten into lately is drawing line work over the watercolors with Prismacolor. So I like doing that too.
I don't notice any of that in the book particular. Is there some of that in the book? Or is that more of a recent? Okay, so like this one here, would this be
I don't think there's any. Yeah.
And then like the character right there would he have like the pencil over the top of him maybe?
I don't know. Probably not on that one.
Okay.
But the ones that are more like vignettes, just like a character with no background, there's probably going to be drawing on those because I sort of got into that about halfway through the project.
Oh, I see. Like maybe like this one then. Oh, it's hard to like line up my camera. There we go.
Yeah, probably there.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it almost has like a Miyazaki flair to it. The watercolor with the pencil on it.
Absolutely. He was the guy that I was looking at the most while I was doing this. Like he's a huge favorite of mine. And so I'm glad you said that. I can't think of any artist out there that's probably got more pencil mileage than Miyazaki. I mean,
right.
All his storyboards and comics and animation, like who's drawn more than him? I mean, that guy.
You bring up a good point because he storyboards all of his films, like storyboards them. He's done a 1,000-page comic, Nausicaa, right? Plus all of his little mini like tank comics,
which are awesome.
And then from what I understand, he does some of the animation too, some of the key drawings for the animation as well, right? Like
Yeah,
Like,
there's like documentaries where you see him fixing people's drawings, like all mad, and he's like, "I've got to redraw this. You didn't get it right." So yeah, I mean, he's just drawing all the time. How'd you discover Miyazaki? Oh, a long time ago, like right when Nausicaa first came out, I was working in a comic book store, and they had a copy of it that we would just play. Like on Saturdays, we would just like have it running with like TV screens up in the store. So that was like 1985 or 86 or something. So was that Laserdisc or VHS? No, it was just VHS. It was just like a bootleg copy that the store owner had. So we would like once a month or something, we just play that. And plus we had the art books coming in, because when that came out, like the art books, they were just in Japanese then, they weren't in English, but we would get them. And there was a lot of them, not just the main one, but there was lots of smaller ones too. And so that's when I first found him, and I liked him right off the bat. Yeah. I mean, the appeal is so evident. Like he just captures a mood. And I think that's what I like about your stuff too, is there's a mood there. I feel when I flip through this book, I am reminded of times that I've visited, like I visited England once. It feels like that. But also I lived in New England where there was seasons. Right now I'm in Arizona. Will and I are both in Arizona, where you essentially have hot and less hot. But it makes me feel like, oh, it's gonna, like there's a storm tomorrow. This is what this feels like as I'm flipping through this. Yeah, I'm glad it makes you feel like that, because that's kind of the mood that I wanted to have for it. Was like you want to be inside because you never know what's coming. I wanted it to be like really, well, kind of like Lord of the Rings, like in the Shire, it's nice and pleasant, and you might even want to live there. But as soon as you leave the Shire, things start getting dangerous and ugly really fast. So that's kind of the mood I was going for.
And those are some of the really fun images in there, or the more creepy ones, I would say. I have a question for you, kind of a two-parter. You mentioned that you kind of put this book off for a while, and then you said, eventually you got to a point where you're like, it's now or never. And I did kind of the same thing with a book that I just recently published last year. I felt like I wasn't quite ready. Did you feel like you were waiting till your skills got better, or was it just a matter of carving out time? And then the second part of that is, do you think that up and coming illustrators should wait until they're better, or go ahead and put out, their passion project earlier on?
Well, I think for me, I had to wait until I really felt like I was ready. Also, like what happened was this isn't something that's going to apply to everyone, but it did apply to me in this case, was I inherited some money. So that gave me a chance to not have to worry about work for a little while. And that was like, now I had this piece of time with like a cushion where I could really just dig in and do it. It was like, when that happened, that gave me the chance to really dig in. Now, that's not something everybody gets to do, and that's not going to come along for everyone. But for me, I think it came along at the right time. I think for me, it was better to wait. But also, I didn't do this by myself. Like, I had a publisher that helped me with the Kickstarter. I had an editor who like basically ran the Kickstarter for me, so I didn't have to do that.
That's nice.
And there were 2 book designers working on the book for me. And I had a ghostwriter helping write the story for me.
Oh, wow.
So when I went to the publisher, I said this, like I've known him for years, and I just said like, this is what I really want to do. And I wasn't even pitching it to him as a project. I was just telling him like, this is what I'm going to do. Somehow or other, I'm going to do it. And he said, well, I'd like to do it with you. So that solved like many huge problems, like mainly running a Kickstarter. I don't think I'm organized enough to, run a Kickstarter myself. So yeah, that helped. And
how about the design? Who designed it?
there were two designers. Danny Christopher is the main designer at the publisher. And then Joyce Chin is like his assistant. So they designed it. So I was just doing the art and they put it all together. And it was all very collaborative. So it wasn't like I did all the art first. I mean, I was doing art right up until they had files at the printers. Like they had files at the printers and I was still like, we were still tweaking it. So yeah. And that's kind of where the pandemic sort of helped us because when COVID hit, we were delayed by like 8 months due to shipping problems and all the COVID problems that come along. So that just gave me like 6 extra months to like do new art and fix the story and everything else.
Wow. I had the same thing. That mine shipped out during COVID and it was a nightmare with customs and everything. I hear it's worse now.
Yeah, for some reason, all the problems, they're kind of piling up now.
Yeah.
So for this publisher, is that a typical business model for them? They'll kickstart the book and then they'll distribute it through more traditional, Amazon and bookstores and things like that?
No, mine, I think, was the first one.
Oh, okay.
They just opened up a new imprint and they were going to do, they wanted to do fantasy books. Are you familiar with a fantasy artist named Iris Compete from, they did her book. Like they just redid it.
Oh, okay. I supported her Kickstarter. Yeah.
So, So this publisher is really wanting to do they want to make some nice art books. That's what they're working on right now. But that's new for them.
Right. And I've
they
seen
do a good job.
I've seen major publishers like Dark Horse Comics will launch a Kickstarter from time to time. And it seems like publishers are getting like wise to this crowdfunding thing where this book has an audience for sure, but is that audience shopping on Amazon? Are they shopping online? Are they going to bookstores? And I feel like the people, the early adopters for this sort of book are the people surfing Kickstarter, looking at, I see a lot of like RPG similarities from this, this book and RPGs. And so I kind of feel like that Kickstarter was a pretty wise move to at least get like initial interest and initial funding to make this book happen. How well did it do?
I think it did pretty well. We ended up having about 1,200 and something backers. So
that's good. That's solid.
It was funded on the first day. And we were pretty happily shocked by that. So I was just praying that, we were going to make our minimum amount of money, but luckily it did really well. But I was tweeting about it and promoting it for 2 years before we actually, before the Kickstarter actually kicked off.
Right.
So I was trying to generate interest right from the start.
And I want to add there too, to anybody interested in doing a Kickstarter and running a Kickstarter, you cannot talk about it enough because the people you're going to annoy aren't interested. And so you don't need to worry about them. And the people who are going to love it are so distracted by everything else that you just have to keep talking about it so you finally hit them. And for example, I'm a perfect example of that. I'd seen your art. I don't pay close attention to everything online. And in a 1 month period when a Kickstarter's running, I might, my attention might be elsewhere and completely miss it. Right. So you can't do it enough. And this is a perfect example of that. Luckily you guys your publisher put it on Amazon, is able to get a copy. I got a copy. Will got a copy, and I got to say too, my daughter, she's 11, loves this book as well, and I'll find her at the dinner table with scraps of paper designing her own little like animal creatures and stuff, and
that's amazing.
She's way into it. So this is it's a multi-generational appeal here.
Yeah,
well,
I like to hear that.
I think it goes to the heart of anyone who likes any kind of fantasy. It's these secret worlds that don't really exist, but you feel like they do, and it's just super fun. I want to find out more about your backstory. If like, where did you go to school? How did you even think about becoming an illustrator? What were some of the first jobs you did? Stuff like that. A lot of our viewers, our listeners and viewers are, trying to break into this business, and so I think they'd be interested in finding more about you.
Okay, well, I went to Sheridan College in Ontario for animation. That's kind of where I started. The first drawing training I got was in animation. And actually, that brings to mind something. I was listening to one of your podcasts this morning, and you were talking about the dilemma of the C student. And I was a C student. So it got me thinking that like one of the things you guys didn't touch on was persistence, because C students, if you don't give up, you can learn it. I mean, I didn't learn any of those key things. I was watching my friends like grasp drawing fundamentals and animation fundamentals that, it just was going right over my head. I just couldn't get it. I couldn't make my hand do it. I just couldn't get it. But eventually I got it. I did learn. And the other thing too is like in class, there's always going to be like the superstars in class. And they're the guys that as soon as they graduate, they get hired at a studio or something like that. And they go off and they get busy and they work. But what happens, and I've seen this with people that I know, is they get busy and their work plateaus because they're not working on getting better anymore. They're working on completing projects or they go up the ladder and they're not drawing as much anymore. Mm-hmm. So while they're plateauing, you can still be working and you can catch up to them. Mm-hmm. So kind of, I just wanted to put that out there because there's a lot of C students out there that should not give up.
That's what happened with me and Jake. He was the superstar. He kind of atrophied and just kind of plateaued. And I'm working on trying to get past him now. But I was that C student too, and I didn't have anything else that I wanted to do. I felt like, and this is going to date me, but Richard Gere in An Officer and a Gentleman, where he said, "I got nowhere else to go." I'm not going to say it like he did it. But
that's me too.
Yeah.
When you're good at something and love something, that's kind of like you kind of stuck.
Yeah. It's like, that's what another thing are you qualified for?
Yeah. I mean, you can be a C student and it's still your all-consuming passion. So you're kind of, you don't have any choice but to persist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's valuable advice. Definitely. It's keep chipping away, keep grinding at it. Do you have advice on when a person should, give up or when they should find another pursuit? Is that something you've ever thought about?
I've come close thinking about that, but not really. I mean, yeah, I've been listening to some of your podcasts lately because I just wanted to kind of get up to speed with, what we were going to be talking about.
And who the heck these two guys are.
You guys were talking, you were answering somebody's question and they were like, I don't know whether to give up my good paying job and pursue art or just stay with my good paying job and make money. And I was like, you guys were talking about that. And I thought, if you're thinking like that, then you should probably just give up and go for the money. Because there's an old saying that if you can be talked out of it, then you were never meant to do it in the first place. So, I don't know when you would give up. I'm not sure.
I feel the same way. There have been a few people that I have taught along the way that I felt didn't have the. It was more the mental side of it. They didn't. They no matter how long we tried working with them, they couldn't figure out how to tell a story. You know. But I have seen so many people who I thought, there's no way you're going to make it, and then they do. You know, so
it really, honestly, it's like, and I think this is for me too. Like, I have no other marketable skills other than creating art. So it's like, do what? Quit this and do what else? You know, I'm really in a corner now. I have to make this work, or I don't know, flip burgers or something. And no offense to the burger flippers out there. I appreciate that as much as anybody else. But even that, I couldn't hack that when I was 16. They're like, Jake, we'll just put you on the fries.
Even if you had to flip burgers 3 or 4 days a week, that doesn't mean you're quitting illustration. That just means that you're doing this on the side until your next gig comes in or something.
Yeah.
So
that. I like that perspective.
Yeah, because I've done that. I mean, I've been a security guard and I've worked in bookstores. And so what? I never stopped drawing.
Right.
And as soon as the gigs start coming back in, because everybody has dry spells, then you quit that job and then you get on with what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear for me too. The everybody has dry spells. You can't always be hot, right? Like there's an ebb and flow to this career.
The thing is,
I
when I first started seeing your work, and you were prolific, I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even longer, on Facebook. And I'm like, the one big takeaway besides your proficiency and your your demonstration of all the skills. I mean, you were hitting all the notes and composition and rendering and all that stuff. But I was like, this guy loves this world, because that's all you were putting out there. That was coming in my feed. And I'm like, this guy is all in on this little fantasy world that he's got going, and everything fits into that little fantasy world. And that's one thing that I would say is different about you than a lot of artists that I see on social media. Is there a lot of people are just kind of all over the place. And so I was thinking, that's probably,
I feel like you're calling me out right now, Will.
But probably a big reason for the success is if you have something that you really want to say or really want to do, it will show. And I think to a lot of beginning artists, I've taught a lot of students, and one of the things that I've noticed is some students don't like drawing. They think they do, but they're not. They don't draw. In their spare time, they play video games. In their spare time, they do anything but drawing. And I know this from class because they're the last ones set up and the first ones to pack up. And
they like the idea of drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you. So, just to continue with like your story. So you graduated Sheridan, C student, but had this passion and this love for drawing and still cracking away at it. What happened? What happened in like the year after college, the 5-year mark after college, the 10-year mark? Just wondering like what that progression was.
Sure. So I didn't graduate because it didn't take me long to realize that I didn't actually want to be an animator.
Oh, okay.
I loved drawing like an animator. I love that kind of drawing and still do, but I didn't want to be an animator. So I went for 1 year, and then I went to another art school Ontario College of Art and Design. I went there for a year, and then that didn't really do anything for me either. So I went to work in a comic book store. And so that would have been like 1982. So in 1984, I went to work at an animation studio in Toronto. It was called Nelvana. They were making a movie called the Care Bear movie. So I drew layouts on that for about 3 months and then got laid off because that wasn't really my zone either, because I just wanted to draw my stuff. I mean, that's been my problem all along, is I just wanted to draw my stuff. So then I kind of went back to work at the comic book store until about 1989. And all this time I'm drawing. And then I started working in the gaming world. I started drawing for gaming supplements and what do they call gaming modules? Because in the late 80s and then all through the 90s, they were churning those things out just like by the ton. And that was a great time to be a gaming artist because the work was steady. And basically I did that for like right through the 90s, just steady. Like, I don't know how many books I worked on, but probably over 100. And not exclusively. Like when you do a gaming book, you're not the only artist on it. But you probably are going to have like maybe 10 or 15 drawings per book. And if you're working on a couple of books a month, like you're learning, you're drawing, you're figuring it out. And then after that, by the end of the 90s and into the 2000s, the gaming world started getting really dark. Dark fantasy was like really in, dark and nasty. And I started finding that I just didn't want to put myself in the mind frame you have to be in to draw like dark, nasty stuff. So that's when I started thinking like kids books. I want to draw kids books. So I did a few, but my idea of kids books is like Arthur Rackham or John Bauer or, like traditional fantasy kids books. So they weren't really doing a lot of that. I just kept on freelancing on different things until we went to Comic-Con in San Diego, and I met an artist who was just about to become an art director at Wizards of the Coast. But I met him and we were hanging out and we were getting along, but he was just like an artist. So we were just hanging out as friends. And then he became the art director at Wizards of the Coast. And then I started doing magic cards. So that was like a really good gig. And
what year did you start doing magic cards?
I think it was like 2007. It was a set called Lorwyn. And the reason they hired me is because it was like a very kind of fairy tale kind of world they were developing. Okay. So yeah, I did that. I worked on a few sets of that, but then they moved on to something else. And I wasn't really right for that because I'm kind of just like, I just do what I do. And it fit for them at that time. But then, I moved on and then I started getting some animation work, just doing some simple designs for some like below the radar projects. But
so you'd be like the visual development on the visual development team. And
like one of the things that I worked on was the Simpsons people just put out a new one it's kind of like a fairy tale world.
Oh yeah.
Can't remember what it's called, but anyways, I did some work for them on that. And but then they decided like I was just not close enough to their style to anyway, so that's what it's kind of been like for me, is just people find my work interesting and they want to hire me, but then I'm not exactly what they want after all.
So that was leading me to a question of did the book Guelph, am I pronouncing that right?
Yep.
Okay. Do you get much freelance that came from people seeing art directors seeing that stuff on social media?
Yes, I got an offer from France to illustrate The Wind in the Willows.
Oh,
wow.
The one of the books that you were inspired by. Wow.
That's right. So that's coming up in the new year. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I mean, I was approached and I said, we'll talk about it in the new year. So they weren't in a big rush. So I suppose that will happen. And I just got contacted by Wizards of the Coast again to do more Magic cards. So
cool.
I don't know if that's connected to Guelph or not, but somehow it seemed like it probably is because it came right after.
Oh,
so
yeah,
neat.
It's kind of like you. I mean, this book is the biggest calling card. The nicest calling card. Like, hey, here's what I do, and here's what I like doing, and so you can easily. I would actually love to see a Lord of the Rings with animals instead of human. Elves, and like have hedgehogs be hobbits and have wolves be just taking it there. That would be so rad to see in your style. So what I'm getting from you from like this life experience is that you really, there was sort of this my whole thing, and this aligns with it, is that you don't necessarily, you keep your passion a part of you, but you follow opportunity where it takes you. And the whole time you keep working on those hard skills, those skills that are going to make you valuable to, to the people with money. Right. And it seems like that is what worked for you. And what's really interesting to me is that you got a job at a comic shop. And I have a feeling like that was so that you could keep your head in that world. You easily could have got a job at a call center, right, or and spent 8 hours a day there. But the fact that you chose comic shop was kind of an interesting choice to me. What was like, how old were you then? That was early 20s working at a comic shop?
Yeah, so I was like 24, 25.
Yeah. Do you still... How would you say that has impacted you? Like that one decision there?
Well, I still know the people I worked with. So in terms of like friend connections, like I still hang out with some of those people. And it was just good to be a part of the business. Like, okay, for example, back in the 80s, Mobius was touring comic book stores. He came to ours.
Oh,
so cool. I got to go to dinner. I got to go to dinner with Mobius. So like that was my goal.
Heart's racing a little bit.
My heart was racing the whole time. I didn't know what to say. Like I was like, you talk about a nerd in the headlights. I mean, that was me around Mobius, but because he was.
Do you speak French or
no?
Okay, but he speaks enough English.
He does, but not a lot. But yeah, it was just amazing. He was just like this Zen art monk. I mean, he was, for me on that day, he was everything you thought Mobius would be. He was just like calm and
right.
I don't know. He was just like a great character. And I still remember like walking down like the main street of our hometown with Mobius, and he's like gesturing around the street and he's saying like, see, this is what you have to draw. Because I'd had the audacity to show him some of my drawings and they weren't great, but he was still supportive. But he's like, you have to look around, and draw from life. And this is what he was telling me. And like, I still think about that. So that's just amazing. One thing that came out of working at the comic book store. And and then just being surrounded by all the art. Like I picked up the Miyazaki books and I picked up lots of books for like, store discounts. So, I mean, that's a plus. And,
and plus I think too, and maybe I'm just extrapolating, like working at a comic shop, you're now seeing where the rubber actually hits the road, where money is exchanged for art, essentially. And you can see what's selling, what isn't, what grabs people's attention, what doesn't. And I that's why, like, Will and I, we tell people, go have a booth at a con, and you'll learn really quick what people like about your art and what people don't like about your art.
Absolutely. Cons are the best for that.
And have you done cons over the years with Magic? And okay.
Yeah. I like Gen Con. That's the one we go to. It's in Indianapolis. It's a big gaming con. So that's one that I like. We did San Diego that one time, but it's so huge that I don't really see us going back there, but
it's hard to get around. And
it was fun. It was so massive, but the two we like are Gen Con, and then there's another one called Alexicon, and that's for like fantasy painters and magic artists. They all get together and have this con in Pennsylvania. That's a good one.
When you say we, who's we?
My wife and I.
Oh, okay. So you guys are like a.
Is that is that her in the fish tank back there?
In the reflection. Yeah. We just saw her walk past.
Every now and then we see her in the fish tank.
Yeah, she is.
Huh?
What's your wife's name?
Yeah, we do all that together.
Oh, nice.
What's your wife's name?
Patricia.
Patricia. I'm gonna look up her work too.
Yeah.
MacDougall, or does she have a different last name?
Pat Ann.
Where can they find you?
It's down. Just go to Facebook.
Okay. Facebook. Her actual website is down at the moment, but
okay.
She's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Patty Ann? Is that?
Pat Ann.
Pat Ann. Okay. Yeah, we'll check that out too. Cool. Okay, so I have another sort of question here. You've done Guelph, and I like this idea of this wasn't all you. It was this team of people that you sort of worked with.
Absolutely.
So I'm especially curious about the Ghostwriter. So I assume a lot of this is you. Your Ghostwriter was solidifying things and putting things in. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but how did that relationship work? How did you guys work together?
Okay, what happened was I wrote what I thought was like the text, and the publisher looked at it and he said, "This is too short. Like we need a lot more." I'm like, "Well, I don't really have a lot more." So then they brought the Ghostwriter in too. Like, the story is like the bones of it are me,
right?
But all the embellishment is her. Like she's really good, and so that was basically how that worked.
So, for example, like she would sit with you and say, "Okay, let's talk about rats, ravens, and ragteeth. You know what's going on there. Here's your notes. Here's what you've written." And then would she just run with it after talking with you, or would she bring, kind of what her experience is with fantasy to it? I assume you had full editing over it. Like you could go in and say, "Well, that's not right."
Yes, I did have that. But I didn't really want to use it too much because I really like the idea of the team effort. So I had a lot of story meetings with the editor. She would have like a lot of great questions, like, how does the economy work? Or do they believe in God? Or like, what kind of superstitious practices do they carry out? Like, I didn't really think too much about that. And when we started fleshing out the world, these are the kind of questions I would get. And I'd have to think, oh, okay, so let's think about that then. So a lot of that was done with the editor because she's really smart and knows how to flesh a thing out. And then once all that was done, then that's when the Ghostwriter came in. And she just took all the ideas and the bare bones of the text that I wrote. And she just brought in all kinds of like the small details, like what they eat and the names of characters and the names of places. Like a lot of that, some of that I had, but a lot of it I didn't have yet. Because I was thinking big picture. And then she came in and just like brought it all down to like the fine details.
I'm relieved a little bit because I was going through this. I'm like, not only is this art amazing, but how did he have time to write this whole thing?
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, oh, I have to up my game.
No. I really want that to be clear. Like this was a team effort.
Okay.
So
it really, I mean, it is cool. I have a couple of nerd questions about it too. And so is this, does this take place in our world and it's just a different dimension? Like when you travel to this, you become an animal, or is it completely a different world?
Actually, that used to be how it was.
Okay.
Years ago, I had this idea where if you stepped into a fairy ring, like if you know, like fairy mythology, you step into a fairy ring, you're whisked off to the fairy world. So I had it so that you would become an animal and then go to this world. But that was years ago. So I'm just thinking of it now as a separate place, but with the geography basically of being North America.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Because what's cool is the author is a fox who's visiting Guelph for the first time. And I love the idea that the community there is like hired him as sort of this liaison between the other world and them to like show Guelph, and document Guelph for the world. So this fox artist is going around doing watercolors of everything and taking notes. And this is the book that's a combination of all of that. And that's really fun and cool. And it made me wonder, I'm like, did he turn into a fox to do this? Or did, I'm getting it hook, line, and sinker. Like I'm just, I'm all in on it. So that's super cool. I don't know if you've thought this far, but what time period would this take place in equivalent to us? Would it be a present day that's never industrialized, or would it be pre-industrialization? Because I was thinking like late 1800s maybe, or middle 1800s, kind of, well, a lot based on whatever the time period was in the Shire, because in the Shire they had a lot of technology. They had metal, they had a post office, they had
gunpowder,
and they had an economy. So that's kind of what I was thinking, but I like drawing binocular cases. So, so I want our guys to have binoculars. So that implies a whole ton of like lens technology and all kinds of other things. So I want it to be like, I still want it to be fun. So, so I'm thinking like the 1800s, but they have swords. So it's kind of like Robin Hood. So just whatever's fun to draw, basically.
Right. It's a cool thing because it feels like pre-World War I satchels and pouches and the whatever it's called, the canvas wrapping that you put around your ankles and your wrists, but then all the weaponry is clearly 500 years ago
right.
type of stuff. So there's no machine guns or anything. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. I'm curious, what does the next 5-10 years look like for you in regards to Guelph? Is there going to be Guelph 2 and Guelph 3? Do you see yourself retiring, or do you see yourself pulling a Miyazaki and just, dying at your desk someday?
I would love to pull a Miyazaki.
Okay.
That's what I hope happens. We're working on the second Guelph book now. So cool. We're already working on it. And I would just like to keep doing it. It took me a long time to get here. Yeah. And now that I've got this thing to do, I would just love to keep doing it. And if it's a freelance come along at the same time, like Magic Cards or, doing something for the publishers in France, then I will do that. But always with the idea that like Guelph is my main thing. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping happens.
Cool.
That's great.
insight on Guelph 2, what it's going to cover? Is just more territory, or are we going more deeper into time, or can you give away anything?
All I can give away right now is that in the first book, we didn't really talk too much about the dark side. So we're going to find out more about that in the second book. Okay, cool. And I like that. I think I can also say that the main character in the first book, he's got some lessons to learn in the second book. So I'll just leave it there. Okay. So that's cool. Timeline, when do you see that book kickstarting? Probably a year from now, maybe. Okay. That's good. Wow. So that would be 2 years. This came out this last summer, essentially. So 2023, 19. Maybe. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Wow.
So we got a little scoop there, I guess. A Guelph scoop.
One last question for me is, looking back on your work 3 or 4 years ago, is your work better today? Are you still improving?
I don't know. I think so. But it's hard to tell. Mm-hmm. I've noticed a lot of artists seem to plateau at a certain point. And even the guys that are really good, like someone like Alan Lee, I mean, I don't know if he improves. Like 30 years ago, he was already like drawing like a master. I don't know. His work has changed, but I don't know if it's improved. Mm-hmm. And for myself, I can't say I don't know if I plateaued or not, but I keep practicing. I keep trying.
Yeah. For me, I look back at decisions I made like 5 years ago, and sometimes I'll say, I would change that. I think I would do that a little differently. And maybe it's more of an evolution. Maybe it's not better. Maybe it's just different for me. Maybe it's just different aesthetics changing a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe smarter.
Yeah. What to leave
on
out.
the back cover. On the back cover here, you have a Peter DeSeve quote and a Mike Mignola quote. Are you guys hanging out and having lunch together? And you just say, "Hey, you guys do a quote," or how'd you reach out to these guys? How'd you get on their radar?
I got on Mike's radar through Facebook. Mm-hmm. He bought a painting from me one time, and then we just kind of keep up with each other on Facebook. And I asked him if he would do a blurb for me, and he agreed. And Peter DeSeve, I kind of started following on Twitter, and then I met him a couple of years ago at CTN, briefly, and but then we stay in touch on Twitter. So I just asked him, and he agreed to that. So
cool.
Yeah, we're not really hanging out, but we are aware of each other. Yeah, it was a big favor from both of them.
Nice. That's nice. I want to see them do fan art. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too.
You'll have to have them ask if they'll help out with the Kickstarter, do a special Guelph print or something.
Yeah, maybe for the next one. That's a good idea.
Just planting a little seed there.
Would you do one?
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't even have to ask.
All right.
Yeah. If that's whenever that rolls around, just let me know and I'll carve out some time to make something cool.
Okay. Agreed.
All right. On. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, good. Larry. It's been great. And Will, did you have anything else?
No. It's great. It's nice to finally get to talk to you.
Agreed. It was nice meeting you guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Just interviewed Larry. What a nice guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Super nice guy. And I really appreciate him taking the time to talk to us.
Most artists are down to earth.
Yeah. That was cool. And you could tell too that that Mike Mignola and Peter DeSeve was just like, sure thing, I'll do a blurb for the back of your book, as a testament to his nature and his friendliness too. I want to talk about that Mobius thing. So what was cool, from what I understand, Larry, he lives in Canada. Canada's beautiful and it's nice, but it isn't like chateaus and Alps, mountain ranges, and it isn't like, full of like majestic scenery around every corner. It's not Yosemite. And Mobius is sitting there walking down the street with them, and he's saying, this is what you need to draw. This is what you have to draw. And that got me, because I'm like, I live in the middle of suburbia, Arizona suburbia, which isn't known for its beauty, but how much of that plays into my work, or how much am I letting that play into my work? And if I pull from that, will it give my work an interestingness that it doesn't have? I don't know. Did that hit you at all? Did you think about that at all?
The fact that we live in, kind of a modern looking.
Yeah. Or anybody that lives anywhere. Let's say you live in, I don't know, downtown Burbank, California, which I don't think is beautiful.
So this is a good question. And I don't, I've heard a lot that artists say, I moved here because I like the scenery and it's inspired my drawing, or I live in this country and that's where. I feel like with the internet, I have never felt stifled as far as my creativity with being able to do research. Now, I am definitely inspired when I travel, the limited traveling that I do. And that has inspired some work, but in general, I get online and I look at other artists' work. I look at photos of places, and all of a sudden things just start coming. And I feel like it's overhyped a lot of times.
Yeah.
The need to live somewhere else, because let's say you live in Ireland, or you live in, I don't know, in the North Pole or something. I mean, like, is that all you're going to draw? Is that environment where you are? You know what I mean? Like,
that's super interesting.
Yeah. So place, I don't put as much stock in it as some people do.
And I think that comes to the heart of what Mobius is saying, is like, there's inspiration right here where you live, even though you're not in a majestic place, a fancy place. So that really stuck with me. I'm going to think about that. I also thought it was cool that he just kept drawing. School didn't work out for him. He goes and gets a job at the comic shop, which I thought was an important decision too. But then he just keeps drawing. He keeps drawing. I thought networking, and I use that term lightly, not lightly. I mean, friendship making, essentially. He was making friends with people. Like he said, he became friends with this guy who eventually became an art director at Wizards of the Coast. And that led to a bunch of good work from doing the Magic cards. Staying in touch with friends at the comic shop leads to other things. So I think there's a lot to learn here. It's that you work on your stuff, you make friends and keep friends that are aligned with your interests, and then you sort of follow these opportunities, see where they'll take you. It sounds like too, Guelph happened because he was friends with the publisher, and he wasn't like pitching Guelph to him. He's just saying, oh, this is what I want to do. And his friend was like, well, I want to open up this imprint and let's do something like that.
That's also not coincidence. I don't believe those kinds of things. I feel like we create our own opportunities. The fact that he knew the publisher, it's from being out there and working and putting his work out there. Right. And then you end up gravitating towards the people that can help you with your project and your vision.
Right. Yeah. Putting your stuff out there. Like he said, Mike Mignola bought an original piece of art from him.
Yeah. That says a lot right there.
Right. So it means like I kind of feel like maybe for many years he was an artist's artist. So it's like the normal average public might not have access or exposure to his work, but because artists are always hyper aware of all the other artists around, they gravitate towards it. So that's how Mike Mignola was early on. Mm-hmm. You know, now there's a broader appeal to his stuff because Hellboy's, you know, in the zeitgeist. But right. I remember early on showing his work to people and them just being like, "You like this stuff?" I'm like, "Yes, I like this stuff."
Isn't that funny how things become acceptable mm-hmm. when they're it's approved now by mm-hmm. you know, because people by and large want to be told what to like.
They want to be and you just get conditioned to like things over
popular.
Time. You know,
but people like you liking something that other people are going, you like that? It takes bravery to hold your ground. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, because again, most people don't like something until it becomes safe.
Right. Yep. That's true. And it goes back to that quote I shared last episode where it was, if you're really into a certain style, it's what is relevant right now. Mm-hmm. And if something looks ugly to you, it's what's going to be relevant in 5 years.
I would say sometimes. Not
I mean, it's not a commandment. It's not.
Right.
But for example, for me, I never was into Jack Kirby art.
Oh.
And I was just like, I don't see the appeal. I don't know why people like this. Mm-hmm. Captain America looks goofy. What's with all the squiggly lines? And guess what I was doing this morning? I was looking at a Flickr page on, you remember Flickr?
Yeah.
I still go there almost daily because there's cool stuff. But I was looking at a Flickr album full of Jack Kirby comic book spreads and downloading them to a folder because I wanted, and then like studying. I'm like, oh wow, look at all that energy. Look at that. Mm-hmm. Look at that gnarly shaped like technology that he's doing. And I'm realizing like, oh my gosh, I get it now. I understand the appeal. Mm. 'Cause he brings life to comics. Whereas I was really interested before in, you know, composition and a little bit of realism. And now I want like emotion, and that's all he is emotion. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Anything else? Any takeaways? Or we're going to wrap this up.
Let's wrap it. It was just a great interview.
Yeah. Cool. I can't wait to talk to him when Guelph 2 comes out.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, we'll be able to help out with that Kickstarter. Yeah. That'll be fun. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. 3 Point Perspective is brought to you by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. And your hosts today were Will Terry and Jake Parker. You can find Will Terry's work at willterry.com and his Instagram account, Will Terry Illo. Is that what it is? At Will Terry Illo?
Instagram, Will Terry Art.
Will Terry Art.
Yeah.
I'm going no notes this time too. Lee White couldn't join us, but you can find his work at leewhiteillustration.com, and his Instagram account is Lee White Illo. That's where I got him mixed up. So it's Will Terry Art, Lee White Illo, and then my Instagram is Jake Parker, and you can find my artwork at jakeparkerart.com. Special thanks to Daniel too, who produces this podcast. Thanks to David Bro for his work on SVSLearn as our production manager. And thanks to Lisa for all the administrative work that she does to keep our things running here. This is a team effort, a team project. And so we just want to give a shout out to them. And special thanks to Lily, who's been helping out with writing copy and doing show notes for us on this podcast. Okay, if you want to take part in the discussion on this podcast that's happening over on the SVS forums, just log in over there and find the thread to where we shared this topic. Always nice to hear people's thoughts. You can also comment on our YouTube video. And there's always great comments happening over there as well. If you like this podcast, please leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. We love it. Podcasts live and die by word of mouth. So whatever you could do to share the 3-point perspective love would be great. And lastly, you guys go draw something today. Bye.
Bye.